Welcome to Season 6 of the Get Out of Teaching podcast. This podcast is for teachers who are considering leaving education and need some support. I'm your host, Elizabeth Diakos. I'm a career transition coach and the host of the Get Out of Teaching private membership community, where we support teachers with the resources they need to create a life they love. Find out more at www.getoutofteaching.com. In this season, we'll be speaking with former teachers who have set themselves up in business, as well as business coaches and solopreneurs who can inspire you as you plan your exit, especially if you've been thinking of creating your own business. But I also want to share something with you because many teachers from the United States want to escape the classroom, but have concerns about losing their health insurance. That's where Nate Beer, the insurance pioneer, can help. Nate offers a free 10-minute initial consultation where he can ask you some questions about your health insurance needs and suggest a plan that is just right for you and your family. Any information you disclose is completely confidential and subject to HIPAA regulations. Tick off one of your biggest concerns about leaving education with Nate Beer, Insurance Pioneer. You can book a call with Nate at theinsurancepioneer.setmore.com. Episode 2. Hi everyone, welcome to the show. On today's show, I'm really delighted to be speaking with former teacher, now turned career coach, Angela Wilson. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Angela.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me on here, Elizabeth.
So give us a little bit of your background. Tell us your story. How did you get into doing what you're doing now?
Sure. I was a teacher on and off for about 14 years. And for me to finally once and for all get out of teaching, I had an unexpected change in 2016. So there's always moments in our lives that we can remember the day, the date, maybe what we were wearing, and those memories sort of come back very vividly. And for me, it was October 9th, 2016. I was at home with my family and this unexpected windstorm swept through my quiet suburb. And instantly it went from a beautiful sunny day to cloudy, windy, winds were howling, trees where I live are very tall, they were thrashing backwards and forwards. And the panic started to set in. And before we had time to decide, do we stay, do we go? I remember standing in my lounge room in this dark shadow of instant panic. When we saw this dark shadow at the corner of our eyes, we just knew instinctively to grab children, run outside, and we witnessed a massive gum tree crushing our home, and cries of children. I can even feel it now, that breathlessness going, wow, I cannot believe that this has just happened. And I was witnessing my home being crushed. The cars were actually trapped, so we had nowhere to go. And it was in that instant, everything that I had been thinking about or planning for the future or worrying about just went. And for the next 3 years, the focus became about my rebuild of my home and my family. And it was in that time that I really discovered a different part of me. I began to create new little habits to try and work through the process of a natural disaster and grieve the loss of my home while battling insurance, as well as counsel to rebuild. So while all this was going on, I felt like my life went on hold, but I had little snippets of, oh, something's really forming, something's changed within me. And I was actually forced back into teaching. I'd left teaching, thought that I was done with it. I deregistered, and then I was forced back into it towards the end of it, and to help rebuild our home. Right. The bank said, if you do not have a job that shows this much income and projection for the future. So I was forced back into that reliable teaching position. And I was able to get back into that very quickly, even though I knew that I'd got out of it for a reason. I was back in it to rebuild our home and finance everything. And so here I was back in teaching. I made it work for a little while. We finally got back into our home 3 years later, and then the dust began to settle and I thought I was moving into, I guess, my new life, a fresh start, new home, out of all of the pain and the trauma that we'd been through. And I was still in teaching, and I thought, I'm going to give this a really good go. I was placed back in here for a reason. And it was 2020, within a week of teaching my brand new class, I knew that teaching was not for me. I was shown loud and clear that everything that I had left teaching for in that very beginning phase was amplified, and I was shown that I'm done. I really needed to get out. Yet I was already pulled back into that. I'm teaching a grade. How am I meant to leave within those first couple of weeks? I'd committed. And so I was stuck in this career crisis. I really felt trapped with no place to go. I had begun to question everything around me. Now that that dust had settled on that unexpected change, I was a different person, but who was I? And if it's not teaching, then what do I want to do? And this crisis and this deep void within me, it wasn't something that I could push to the side anymore. And I started doing little things to try and explore what this meant to me. But I was finding that working full time, coming as a teacher, coming home, I was quite tired and exhausted, and I didn't know what steps to take. And then COVID hit.
Oh, of course.
We were in lockdown.
Okay. So wait, I want to take you back first. Just something that just piqued my curiosity, and we'll get back to this. Okay.
Yes.
So hold that thought, COVID, but I just want to take you back. You said that you had deregistered and then you had to get registered again. Yeah.
Yes.
Because I've deregistered now, and there is this fear in me that if ever there was a situation where I would need to go back into teaching, oh my gosh, I'd have to jump through all those hoops again.
Yes.
And part of me, that's why I deregistered, because I'm like, I don't want to go back. And this will force me to not go back, because the pain of having to jump through all the hoops again to be registered would be too much, and I would find another way forward. So tell us that little snippet of that story, if you don't mind.
Yeah, we planned this with the financial advisor that said, you have to go back to teaching. There's no other option. And I thought, I have to re-register. So I rang, I'm in Victoria, so I rang VIT, and they said it takes 6 weeks and you just have to fill out these paperwork, and that was done. In that time, I had already started reaching out to, I thought, well, for me, I want to go back into places that I want to work in, but it was actually very easy. It was just filling out a form, going back in. However, because I deregistered, I wasn't a fully registered teacher anymore. I had to go through VIT again. So
you had to do your portfolio and all that.
Yes, I knew that when I had deregistered the first time, or when I deregistered and left teaching the first time. So I knew that that was something that I had to be ready for. And I know it sounds like lots of hoops to jump. It wasn't that. I think it was more mentally for me to go, I have to go back into this, and I have to prepare to be back in a classroom. So I started sort of slowly. I found just a part-time job in that first 6 weeks to work at a community hub within a school, to go back into that environment and to prepare myself for what I was really about to do. And I had to really work on, okay, I'm going to be in a classroom again. And so I think for me, it was more that personal and mindset about going back in there, rather than all the hoops. That was very easy.
Okay. Oh, that's good. That's good to know if that situation ever arises in the future, because the thought of having to do all that again, I guess the advantage would be that you know what you're doing because you've already been a teacher, whereas when you're a graduate, it's quite hard and you don't have the resources, Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's go back. So you just gone back, you just got your house, you just started your new job, you're in this class. What grade were you teaching?
Grade 1-2.
Grade 1-2. So they're nice little cute little kids, maybe a little bit snotty, but quite nice generally at that age. And they're pretty reasonably self-sufficient. They can maybe get themselves to the toilet without help, that kind of stuff. So it's pretty nice age group. and something triggered this realization that it wasn't for you. This is before COVID, yes?
Yes. Yeah.
So what can you share that? That sounds really like frightening. What was that for you?
For me, it was the dynamics of the classroom in particular, that the school that I was at had a lot of children with needs that required a lot of management. And within that first week, there was triggers going off everywhere, and there was little spot fires that had to be put out, and some of them were beyond what I could even do with myself. And I had one aide in the class, and that anxiety of not being able to capture every student or to be able to help the ones that are struggling because the attention is pulled away, it created fight and flight mode within me that put me back to the 3 years that I'd spent in an insurance claim and fighting counsel. And it was almost like it was triggering things within me. And I just went, I can't be in this environment that's going to trigger traumatic experiences within me, because then I can't be the teacher that I need to be, because I'll be regulating myself the whole time. So the dynamics of the classroom, I felt that the support that I needed wasn't there. And I didn't know who to go to. I had reached out to a few people, and I got that's just what happens as a teacher. And yep, that's what happens at this school. And I started thinking, this is something that I can't accept as my reality. I can't just pretend that everything's okay for me when I can't be that teacher that I need to be. There was just too many restrictions.
Yeah. Okay. So there was this like really stressful environment,
Yeah.
and you're there in a silo trying to manage it without support from outside. And I think anyone listening will totally resonate with that story.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Yes.
That's why if you're listening to this podcast, that's why you're listening to this podcast. Okay. Yeah. So what happened next? I'm so fascinated by this story. What was the next step for you?
Yeah, for me, that was when I was COVID hit. And it was, for me, COVID was a blessing, and it gave me space and a chance to breathe and go, whoa, is this really happening? And what am I going to do about it? I have been in this position before where I knew that teaching wasn't right. And now you've been really shown. And because I'd been through what I had been through, I went, I'm not going to hang around and try part-time CRT, maybe PE teacher again, and do all of those different things to see if it's maybe just me, because I thought I was the problem. When I really went, hold on a minute, what I'm doing is I'm looking at teaching with the wrong lens, and my career with the wrong lens. So I had to get a different perspective about careers. I really felt like I stumbled and sort of fumbled my way through all my decisions, leaving high school, university, and all of those kind of really big decisions along the way. And so for me, it was, well, what is career planning? What is career development? What is it that are my interests, my strengths, my values? And I started, the more that I looked into one particular area, so what were my experiences? Where have I traveled? What have I done? And then it led me to another thing and another thing. And I started collecting all these little, I guess, activities and ways to go, oh, wow, I never thought of myself in that way, or I never knew that about myself. And gee, haven't I changed since what I've been through? And this is who I am now. And visioning for the future was one of the biggest things that I had to work on, because I'd been in this little bubble for 3 years going, you're focusing on your family and rebuilding your home. And I'd sort of forgotten about, well, what do I actually want to do? Because it was about me and my own journey and my career development from then on. And if it's not teaching that I want to do, well, what is it? And I just remember the world expanding sort of before my eyes and going, oh, there's so much more out there that I have never even considered. I remember even ringing the army and going, tell me about your recruitment process and what do you actually do in your jobs? Because I was just so interested to find out other industries and what they were doing, and talking to people going, what do you do as a job? How did you get into that? So I was having conversations, different conversations with people, all while I was still doing remote learning, online teaching. I was finding these little pockets of time that COVID had opened up for me. Yeah.
And did you find that just with your class, that the classroom management got easier? Because I know a lot of teachers were kind of delighted that they could just hit the mute button if it all got out of hand.
So what I found was the students that were struggling in the classroom, they didn't really show up to the Zooms or the WebExes that we provided. They had to be I had to work with them in a different way, and I actually got to do more coaching and one-on-one stuff and phone calls, and look at teaching in that small group perspective, which just sat so well with me and reminded me that I do really love coaching and mentoring, and it gave me that sort of fulfillment that I went, oh, this has been missing. To teach a class of 26, I felt very unsuccessful, but coming into those small groups and one-on-one, I went, this makes me feel very successful and really utilizes my strengths and skills. So the classroom management wasn't even an issue when we were online. It was more about how can we work with the student and engage them. And I just had to be really creative and get really curious and try different things, which were beyond the classroom. And I really enjoyed online learning as well.
So you're saying you had a class of 26 grade 1 and 2s.
Yeah.
That's pretty big for
that
age group.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So small wonder you were struggling, apart from all the other issues that were going on. Just that's a large class. Yeah. So did you finish out that year? What was that, 2020?
Yes. So what I did was, I'm a very committed person, and what I had to work through each moment and each term, going, I'm going to get to the end of this term and I'm still going to take steps forward in discovering what it is that I want to be doing. And so I set little goals for myself, get to first term, get to halfway. And I never wanted to be one of those teachers that really count down to the end of the week or the end of the term. So for me, I did that with this goal in mind, that I would be leaving when the time came. And I did finish that year off. I still remember at the end of the year, I had already found career development. It took, I'm just thinking, it was probably about halfway through the year. So a good 3 months of exploring. And that's when I found career development, and or had already felt like I'd stepped into that industry, even though I was already still teaching. And so I had my foot sort of in both. And once I said to the principal at the end of that year, I'm not coming back as a full-time teacher, the weight was lifted off. And I remember I even cut my hair and everything. I just went, this is me now. I'm moving into another industry. And that was one of the big steps that I had to take, and voice it as well to the principal.
And so do you still teach part-time now, or have you finished, like, have you left altogether?
I have left altogether. After I finished that year, I got to do the tutoring initiative. So I got to do a little bit of coaching and working with small groups while I found a role in career development, which was my goal in that second, I guess that year, 2021, so last year. And it's pretty much a year since I've been fully out of teaching. And it was, I think I could remember there was another lockdown, and I said, now's the time to move on, because I'd gotten a part-time role in a career coaching role and consulting, and everything just started moving forward in that area. And yeah, it was a very quick exit after that.
So do you run your own business, or do you work for somebody else?
So I run my own business, and I do some consulting as well. That when we think about building a business, it takes time to to build all of that. So to make sure that I cover expenses like a repayment on a house and the bills, that I've got my consulting that covers that while I also build my business.
Right. So so the consulting is working for, who do you do that with? Or like what does that look like without naming names?
Yeah, so I work with Year 9 students at state schools, and we go through career assessments, and I'm one of their first point of call for career development. That they've done this assessment, we unpack it, we get half an hour, and Year 9 students, most of them don't have a clue where they want to go. They haven't thought about careers. And I remember being in Year 9, not having much of an idea of where I wanted to go. So I keep that in mind while I get to really capture them and talk about career development and talk about careers and finding out more about themselves. And it's a really great space to be in at that particular age. And I also consult to a university, and I work with, it happens to be education students that are working through their course and then want to be employable as well. So I get to see career development at different ages. And then with my business, I work mainly with women and adults.
Right. Okay. And so did you go and do some training in order to prepare yourself for that?
Yes. So while I was still teaching in my grade 1-2 grade, and COVID had given us extra time, I went and did a grad cert in career development and education. And it was so much more personal development, connected with theories, which I really love finding out about. But for me, it was so much about, oh, this makes sense. This is why teaching wasn't aligned with me, or this is how I can move forward. And now I can help other people as well. So it was an amazing connecting of dots for me. When I learn things and they make sense and they resonate, I go, oh, wow, I've got to pass this on to other people. And yeah, I do get to do that. What did you
discover about teaching? Why did you, like, what was it about teaching that wasn't aligned? How did you work that out?
I know that as I look back, there was a feeling inside myself to begin with, that going, why doesn't it seem right? And what I've found through all my exploration and experiences, it was my values, that my values were misaligned, that professionally, the biggest one for me and personally is freedom. And I found that in teaching, I didn't have the freedom to be the teacher that I wanted to be, or the freedom to be able to have a sick day or just a mental health day, because I went, oh, well, how am I meant to do that? I still have to plan and prepare. It's just easier if I show up, and I can't just take a holiday in August around my birthday because I'm going to be teaching then. And so there was just a misalignment of my values, that I didn't know what the feeling was, but I now know that would have been draining a lot of my energy to pretend that the job that I had was working. And I had done all that study to become a teacher, but it actually wasn't aligned with me.
That's so interesting. Yeah. I totally get that. And I'm next week. So when this is being recorded, it's in June and it's winter here in Melbourne and it's miserable. But we're going up to Cairns, which is north and sunny, and, we'll be swimming and it'll be lovely. And part of me, my husband said, yeah, remember we booked this deliberately so that it was outside of the school holidays? And I'm like, yes, freedom. It is such a great feeling to be able to, and also to pee whenever you like.
Yes.
That's also very cool.
Yes.
Okay. So what advice would you give to someone who's feeling stuck? They feel like maybe they are trapped, like you felt. What advice would you give to someone in that situation?
Yeah, if someone's feeling a little bit trapped and lost and stuck, that I want them to know they're not alone, that there's other people that would be feeling the same, that are probably just pretending that everything's okay. So they're not alone, that other people would be feeling that. And as hard as it is to become aware of that, the situation that they're in, to really look at their life. So whenever I work with someone, we take stock of their life in that very beginning phase, going, how is your career? How is your wellness? How is your relationships and that love? And what about playfulness? Because sometimes we can be feeling really lost and stuck, and we think our whole life isn't working, yet it might just be a small part. And by taking stock, so noticing that you're feeling a little bit lost and trapped, and knowing that there are other people out there, but taking stock of your life and looking at it and wanting to go deep, because that's the thing I knew for a long time, that it wasn't right even the first time, and I kept avoiding it and ignoring it, and I had to really own it and accept it the second time that I left teaching, and go, what can I do with this feeling now? So taking stock is a really great starting point. How's your life really going?
Yeah, I love that. And so when you're doing the consulting into schools, are you working with a private company that goes into schools, or are you employed by the school to do that?
It's a private company. So I've got my own ABN, which is a whole new world to understand that business side of things, and to put together your tax and all of that. I've got a great accountant that helps me with all of that too.
So I guess the question I'm asking is, like the stuff that you're doing in schools, that's your business, is it? Or is that with somebody else?
That one, I see that as a part of my business, but yes, it is through another organization. And
so do you subcontract to them? That's what
yes, that's what I'm trying to think. That was the word.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, gotcha. Okay. I just was, because I think, people listening are going, okay, so I'd love to do, a lot of people say, I'd love to be a consultant in a kind of, in that education space, because it's very familiar and we understand it, but I don't want to be in the classroom. And this sounds like the dream job. Like, you're getting one-on-one people, you're having these conversations, and also you've got a reliable income that's coming in from the side, and you're doing your own business as well. So you've got two streams of income. So, if one fizzles out, you've still got the other one coming in. So it sounds great, but I just wondered, what's the structure of that? So it's you're a subcontractor, so
yes,
you need your ABN and you invoice them for your time, I guess.
Yeah, and that's the way that one is set up. And what I've noticed is a lot of others are set up like that too. But when I think of streams of income, what I realized is that I don't just have to have one stream of income. I've been working with a business coach to get my business up and out of the ground, because I can get very bogged down in those little fiddly things like getting my website up. And I've tried that before, and it just didn't work. And so I hired a coach to help me and support me through that. And what I've found is that I can do consulting, I can do coaching. I'm also an author, so I wrote a book about my journey, and that's another stream of income. Speaking, so being on webinars and also at events, that's another stream of income. So it's opened my eyes up into all these different ways that I can make an income from what I'm doing, and not just have just that one avenue.
And so, Angela, what's the name of your book?
My book is called Career Crisis, and it's for those who are experiencing unexpected change. And it follows a set of steps, just like I took, to really transform, to uncover that next chapter, especially when you've been through change, and everyone's been through change lately, and to once and for all and finally discover the meaning and purpose of life. I've found that working through this series of steps was so transformational for me, and anyone else that goes through them as well. They don't seem to hit those same barriers or come back to that same point years later. It's about really transforming.
Nice. Okay, so we're going to put all those links into the show notes for this episode. If someone wanted to get in touch with you, what would be the best way to do that?
I've got a website, so careerdesignstudio.com.au. There's also socials that you can connect. I'm on LinkedIn. That's a whole new world for me.
Mm-hmm.
As a teacher, I didn't know much about it until recently. And I'm dabbling into all the other social medias as well, and having a bit of a play and fun. That's sort of a way that I can see where people are and yeah, what are they doing with most of their time as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think, is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you that we haven't covered today?
I just think, in summary, I mean, I've been through a lot of what I've been through, and to sum it all up, I guess the most important things is to understand yourself and your situation, gain a new perspective on your life, on your career, have the support system that's going to help you through that. Because if you're not getting the support, there is support out there. And also be creative with your career, because that was something that I had never even considered before. And once I started getting curious and creative, everything started to change. So I guess summing everything up into those 4 points.
Fantastic. Angela Wilson, thank you so much for coming on the Get Out of Teaching podcast today. It's been a fascinating conversation. I really enjoyed talking to you.
It's been great. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Get Out of Teaching podcast with your host, Elizabeth Diakos. If you want to hear the conversation that continued after we stopped recording, you'll find that in the After the Bell section of the Get Out of Teaching private membership community, where along with a heap of resources to support you, you'll get access to group coaching with me. Join a community of teachers who are ready right now to plan their exit. Find out how at www.getoutofteaching.com. I've been where you are now, and you don't have to do this alone.